Alright, so in the previous video we went over how to set up AVID, get the settings correct, and prepare ourselves to edit. Now we're actually going to go through the process of actually putting our footage in and actually getting, editing something briefly on a timeline, and we'll go over the timeline and where we put our audio, video, and how we do things here at News 9. So the first thing we do is we have our two bins open, and in a previous video we talked about the NRCS bin and the raw video bin. So we want to click on the raw video bin because we're going to put our video in right now. Now one of the things you want to do is over here in settings you want to double click on link and you'll see this window open. Now up here under volume mounting, we want to make sure that this is checked, automatically link to volumes. Why is this important? Well, by having this checked, when we have a bin open and we put our card into the system, the SD card, a P2 card, or whatever we're using at the moment, the clips are going to automatically populate into the bin. And that's going to be much easier than having to go through the source browser window and etc. So I have that checked. I've highlighted or clicked on the bin that I want to load my clips into. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the SD card into the computer and the clips should auto-populate. Now you'll see this other window open, and this is just, it takes you automatically to the SD card where the contents and everything. We can just close that because right here our clips are automatically loaded in the bin. They are AVC Intro 50, but if you notice right here, these little dots on the side of the clip, that means that these are AMA clips. What an AMA clip is, it means it's reading it directly off the card. And what we want to do is get our video into the internal system so that we're not editing off of the card. And so what we're going to do to do that, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to highlight. So you click on the top one, hold shift and click on the bottom one. And right here over one of the names, these numbers, you're going to right click. We're going to scroll down and select set name column for selected clips. You click on that and this box is going to open. And what we're going to do here is we're going to give it a name. This is going to be the same name for all of our clips. So we're just going to call it MEJ test footage. Now typically, actually let's change that. Let's change it to, we're going to call it, we want to name it the same as our bin. So we'll call it test project MEJ. And you're going to click OK. Set name for all clips, OK. And now you'll see our clips are all the same name. And that's what we want. We want them all the same name. But they are still AMA clips. So we haven't consolidated them yet. See these little dots right here? That means they're AMA clips. So to consolidate the footage, we are going to click on the first one, hold shift, click on the last one. Now with the little hand over top the clip, we're going to right click. We're going to scroll down to Consolidate Transcode and click on that. Now you'll see this window open. Now, because our footage is AVC Intro 50, which is our standard format that we shoot here, we are just going to consolidate the footage. Now, if you were to shoot in MP4 or AVC HD or something different, we would have to transcode it because we would need, transcode means convert. You convert it to AVC Intro 50. But since we've already shot AVC Intro 50, we're going to select Consolidate. And then down here we're going to find the news drive. So news is V, and like I said in a previous video, you need to make sure that the news drive you're selecting is the internal, the system-wide drive, because some laptops and your hard drive, your C drive, will also be called news. So you want to make sure you select the correct news drive. Over here, we are going to click and turn on these audio, convert audio sample to 48 kilohertz. Convert audio bit to 16-bit, and you want your PCM or MXF. And then that's all you should do. You click Consolidate, and a window is going to come up, copy media files, and you want to keep native master clips linked to media on original drive. What that means is we are going to create new clips for the system-wide drive, but it's going to keep the native clips on your SD card. You don't want to delete those, and you don't want to cause the system to look at your card instead of internally. So anyway, you don't need to know that. All you need to know is keep native master clips linked to media on original drive. Click OK. And now the clips are consolidating into AVID. And now you'll see two different sets of clips. So the highlighted clips are our original AMA clips. Those are the clips that are on your SD card or your P2 card. And then you have the new clips above, the new 01, new 02, new 03. So now that we've done that, all we're going to do, we're not going to click or do anything. We're just on the keyboard, we're going to hit delete. The clips are now deleted out of the bin, the AMA clips. So you are done with your SD card. Now these clips right here are the clips that you can edit with. And as you see, as I click on them, the different clips load. And these are our clips. These are the images that we are going to edit with. Now the next step here is we have to label our clips. It's very important because when people are looking for your footage, they need to know what the clip is so they're not having to literally click on and look at every clip, and it makes the process faster. So with the bin, there's different views. Down here in the bottom left, there are some options for how you want to view your bin. And we are on list view right now, so this is how I prefer to edit, with the list. But if we click on this next box down here, this gives us thumbnail view. This gives you the first frame of your video. You can kind of get a quick idea of what's what. Or you can go to list thumbnail view. Now in this, a lot of people love using this, and it's a great, this is really where the best place to put your comments. So what you do is you have to go through here and you have to label what each of these are. We're not changing the name of the clip. We're just putting a comment. So if I were to look at this clip, and I know this is Brian and the dog, so I would just type in Brian and the dog. If I click on this one, I see, okay, that's a pan to Dottie. So we're going to go pan to Dottie. And then this one, Dottie at computer, Brian tight, meaning tight shot. And this one, I'll just call it a room pan because it's kind of an establishment. So there you go. Now what we want to do, after we have loaded all of our clips into the bin and we've now labeled all of our clips and put comments through this, what we need to do is we need to check our bin in so that everybody else in the building can see what we've just put in. So what we're going to do is we're going to, up here in the top left, we're going to click on bin, and we're going to scroll down to production management, and we're going to check in all open bins. So we're going to check that in. So now all of your clips are in, and all your footage is now available to view within the production management window, and that is where everybody in the building can get access to your video. This is the production management window. So within this, over on the left side is a tree that can drop down, and we have, you go to projects, and then you'll go down here to news, and we can move this over, and we find the day. So today's Tuesday, and now you'll see listed here, this is our NRCS bin that we created, and then you also have our test bin down here. If I click on this bin, now here's all the clips that we just loaded. So anybody in the building on the system with AVID open now has access to these, and you can literally click on these individually, and as you click on them, they will load into your source monitor, and you can actually edit directly out of the project management window. You don't have to actually edit out of your bin. So you have two options. You can edit out of your original clip bin, or you can close this, which is what a lot of people do. You can close this, and it takes a few minutes to save. I can edit out of here if I need to, right here. So these are my clips right here that I can edit with. So you have those two options. So now that we have our video in, we have our bin open that we're going to work out of. Now let's talk about actually editing, the process of editing and putting together a sequence of shots. We're going to do a very basic edit right now. But the first thing we need to talk about is where we put our stuff on our timeline. So on the timeline, you'll notice 2 rows of video. Video 2, video 1, audio 2, audio 3. On the left side, video 1, audio 2, audio 2, audio 3, audio 4. The left side is your source clip, which would be here. So this is my raw video. Whatever I'm doing with this clip, right here on the left side of the timeline, this is corresponding with this. So if I were to turn off video or audio 1, now audio 1 will not lay down here in the timeline. So I'm going to turn that back on for a minute. So left side source, right side timeline. Just remember that. So this is your timeline. So just like here, I turned off audio 1. If all these are on, but let's say audio 1's turned off on the sequence, if I lay something down here, audio 1 will not be here. So these, and then you can also mix and match. Let's say I have audio on channel 2 on the source, but I want to put it on channel 1 in the track. You can actually left click and drag and hold and see this little arrow, pull it up to 1. Now these have switched. Now channel 2 in the source is going to lay in channel 1 in the track. That's very important to know. And I'm going to drag these back. So you just left click and hold and drag. And when you do drag, it'll turn it off. This turns on and off, just like we talked about. So now that we know that, let's talk about something else. To add additional tracks, you hit Control Y. That will add another video track to the timeline. To add an audio track, Control U. Now I've just added a 4th track of audio. So when you are editing, you know the video lines, they overlap. Primarily you'll use video channel 1, like graphics on 2, etc., picture-in-picture and things like that. Audio is where you really need to know this. Channel 1 will always be your sound bites. So in an interview, any person on tape talking, their audio goes in channel 1. Channel 2 is your natural sound, which is also should be channel 2 on your camera. So all your natural sound goes on channel 2. Reporter tracks all go on channel 3. Reporter tracks on channel 3. And any music you have would be on channel 4. So that's important to know right here. This little button right here, audio mix mode. We'll make sure to have this set up for you so that you have this. But basically when you click on this, this is where you have the option between stereo and mono. Stereo is going to allow you to hear the different tracks left and right. And remember the audio tracks 1 and 3 will mix in your left ear, 2 and 4 will mix in your right ear. But it allows you to have the individual levels and to be able to adjust your audio. If you click this and go to mono mode, everything is mixed down. You hear everything as one. It's always good to edit in stereo, send your package in stereo to the show, but when you check it, maybe listen and play back in mono so that you can listen to your story and see if there's something's too high, too low. Go back to stereo, make your adjustments. Once you have listened to it in mono and it sounds good to you, go back to stereo and send it to the show. So now let's talk about the basics of laying a clip on the timeline. You'll have these there's a lot of different buttons here across that you can see underneath the source, underneath the timeline player, and even down here above the timeline. There's a lot of different ones that can be used. And then there's also some over here on the left side. We'll get into all that. All these should be turned off over here, by the way, to start out with. So let's just talk about the basics of laying down a sequence of video. And we're not going to worry about sound bites right now. We're just going to lay down a sequence of VO, a quick little VO. So we're going to find our first clip, and let's say this is a pan shot. So at the point where I want to start my shot, let's say I want to start it about right there. On the keyboard, I'm going to hit I for endpoint. And you'll see this added a little icon, a little endpoint icon in your video. And then I'm going to scroll over past the pan, and I'm going to hit O on the keyboard, or out point. Now you should be able to, your keyboard should be labeled. If it's not, we'll get it labeled for you, but your keyboard should be labeled with the shortcuts. But I is an in point, O is an out point. So we now have an in point right here, and we have an out point right here. Now to lay that video in the timeline, all you have to do is hit, let's go over here first in the right side here. So there's a little red arrow. That's an overwrite. It's also B on the keyboard. B as in boy. The yellow one is splice in. It is V on your keyboard. Red just lays it down. And if there's anything there already, it will lay it over top. Splice puts something in between the two clips, or in between wherever the blue line is on your timeline. It's where it's going to put in. We don't have anything here, so we're going to hit this little red. You can either do it with your mouse up here, or you can do it on the keyboard, which I prefer. So I'm going to hit the little red arrow, and I laid it down. Now, if you look at the timeline, I laid everything down, all the tracks, because I had not turned off any of this here. So to undo anything, if you mess up and you need to undo something, you hit Control Z, and we'll undo your last edit. And you can do Control Z several times to undo edits up to a certain point. But Control Z will undo any edit. So now I go back down here, and on the left side here, I know I'm just laying down VO. All I need is my video, and I need my natural sound. And my natural sound is on channel 2 in my camera. So what I'm going to do is, for the sequence side, I'm going to turn off everything except video 1 and audio 2. I want to turn all those off. Now if I hit B or click the red arrow, it has laid down my video. Now when I scroll on the timeline, in the right window, which is the sequence window, you see the shot panning. So now let's say after the pan, I want to put another shot in. So I'm going over here and I'm clicking my sources, and there's a shot, nice tight shot. So now we go from a pan, now we're going to go to tight. So I'll put an in point, I'll scan to there, let's say an out point. And now down here on the timeline, see the little blue line moving? So wherever that's at, if I stop right there and I hit overwrite, or the red one, it's going to put it in from that point. And now I don't have my whole pan because it's not where I wanted it. So I'll hit Control Z to undo it. I'm going to go to the end of that shot, and now I'm going to hit the red arrow, or B on the keyboard, and it added it after that shot. So now if I scan, I've got the first shot ends, and then a tight shot, and that's going to play a little bit. And then let's say, okay, well, I put too much in there, and maybe here's where I want to start my next shot. So in the sequence, if I want to start it right there, I can put an in point, which is I. Now I go up to my next shot. Let's say my next shot's going to be Brian here. And right there is about where I want to start. I put an in point, go out point, and now down here in the timeline, I've already got an in point in the timeline. So that is where the video is going to start when I lay it down. So I lay it down. Now if I scroll, I've got a pan, I've got a tight shot, and now I have another tight shot. So let's say we go to that point and I want to put another shot in. I'll put an in point, or let's go back first. G clears out your in and out. It's also this little icon here, clear both marks. You can find that on there as well. It's right here. Let's go back, and let's say between Dottie's shot and Brian's, I want to put a clip in between there. If I hit Control and I left click at that point, it automatically puts the blue line at the edit point. And at that point, you can put an in point, or you can just leave it there. But Control click takes you to the edit point. At that point, I'm going to find another shot. And let's say I have this low shot of Brian. Let's say I want to do that before I go to the tight of him. I'll put an in point, and that about matches up to where the next shot is. So I will go out point. Now, with the blue line at the edit point, instead of the overwrite, I'm going to click the yellow one, which is splice in. And that just laid the clip in between the two I already had on the timeline. So it is here. And now what I have is, if I scroll through, I've got my pan, I've got Dottie, now I've got the low shot of Brian, and then the tight shot of his face. So I have a sequence of shots. And a sequence of shots, as we know, tells a story. So that is a VO, and I've just cut a 12-second VO in AVID. So that's the basics of that. Now, if you had an interview, which I didn't shoot an interview here for this, but if you had an interview, and let's say at some point along the line, let's say right here before this shot, we're going to do an interview. Control click, and it takes you to the edit point. Now, let's say your source up here was an interview. Well, your interview should be on channel 1. So we're going to go down here and we're going to deselect channel 2 and turn on channel 1. Now, if we were to find an in point and an out point in our source, let's find something. Go in and out. Let's say that was an interview, and that's a soundbite you want to put in. Now that you've deselected 2 and selected channel 1, if we splice that in, now see where the audio laid on channel 1, and that's where our soundbite would be. And that's how you begin building your sequence. So that's the basics of being able to just get your video in the system, in and out points, and laying video in a timeline. The last thing I'll show you before we finish this video is trimming in the timeline. So, trimming, let's say, for instance, we get here, this is a soundbite, and it goes, I've went too far, and it needs to stop. I'll play it, and I want to stop it right there. Now, the arrow buttons on your keyboard will let you go 1 frame, either direction. So you can fine tune, and when you turn on caps lock on your keyboard, now as you scroll, you would be able to hear the audio, and you'll be able to pinpoint where that soundbite stops. When you find out where it stops, you'll put your in point, and then you'll click to the end. So control click, go back 1 frame and put an out point, and see how it's highlighted. So now when I put an in point and out point in the timeline, this section has been highlighted. If I want to take this section out, then what I need to click on is up here just above the timeline is a yellow up arrow and a red up arrow. Now these ones are to lift or extract. The difference being, if I click the red one, it takes out everything. Now I hit G to clear in and out. It took everything out, but it didn't mesh everything back together. It left a black hole. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo what I did. Now I have to do it twice, and now it's back here. If I click the yellow up arrow, which by the way, these are Z and X on your keyboard. X is the yellow, Z is the red. If I click the yellow one, it just took out that section and brought everything back together nice and neatly. And now it tightened it up. And you can do the same and it's going to take out whatever's highlighted. So we had highlighted, the extract will take everything. Lift will take out what is just selected. And you turn those on the left side over here by selecting and deselecting the track numbers on the left. That is the very, very basics of getting your video in the system, laying down VO, laying down interviews or sound bites. The same approach would happen with your audio track once you track something if you're a reporter. So this is the very basics, and we'll move on and teach you some more in the next video.